So I'm delighted to welcome this morning as our first speaker our good friend and colleague Dan Godfrey, who heads Metro Bank's University. And he tells me, responsible for all things colleague capability at Metro Bank, which, given that bank's growth from a few hundred to more than, I think, 3,000 colleagues now, is a very big role. A lot of colleagues to look after, and clearly very capable colleagues as well, Dan, given the bank's recent good results, the store expansion, and the high levels of customer satisfaction you have. And Dan's brought some of Metro Bank's apprentices with him as well. And we look forward to hearing from all of your experience and insight. Dan.
Great. So good morning, everyone. Quick time-saving question to start with. Who's actually heard of Metro Bank before? Can you show me your hands? Perfect. That means I don't need to go into it and give you the sales pitch, which normally comes about this point. So it's a great pleasure to come and talk to you a bit about our experiences in relation to apprenticeships. I am not an apprenticeship expert by any stretch of the imagination, but we've found an opportunity to use them based on, I think, our unique context, which is that we are growing like the clappers. And actually, we've got a cultural imperative, which is we need to bring people in their early careers and keep them with us to grow with the bank, because our model is based on creating unparalleled levels of customer service. So apprenticeships for us are really all about making sure that we've got the people as early as possible in their career so that we can shape them and turn them into the type of bankers that we want in the future, which is customer-focused bankers who really think about building confidence across our industry and provide, professional levels of advice and services to customers. So we hire for attitude and we train for skill. That's our philosophy. So clearly we have to bring in people from across our industry in order to service some of our more experience requiring roles. But actually, where possible, and we normally manage to achieve this about 60% of the time, we bring people in with no banking experience at all. So Metro Bank University is all about providing all of the training interventions, and we work very closely with Chartered Banker. We've got a great relationship with these guys. They've helped us enormously in accrediting our syllabus to make sure that we're getting the right levels of banking capability into the right spaces so that we're servicing our customers in the right way. So we need to keep people with us, we need to keep them growing, and we want to provide people with a career in banking who wouldn't traditionally, get my teeth in, have the opportunity to do that. And we've brought some people with us who are going to explain a bit about their experiences and coming in at that level. And by that we mean, we've got a rudimentary sort of set of kind of qualifying criteria to apply for a job with us. That's 5 GCSEs, including maths and English at C. And we wanted to be able to tap into people that perhaps maybe didn't actually get that far as well, because part of our ethos as a bank is actually to create shared value. So we want our communities to benefit from our existence at the same time as customers and colleagues who are owners to benefit at the same time. And we think it's just the right thing to do. We think, apprenticeships provide us with the opportunity to do the right thing. And our one-in, one-up training philosophy means that we need as many of them as we possibly can. So what have we been up to since 2013 when we started out on our apprenticeship journey? And Craig Donaldson, our CEO at the time, said that we were going to take on 150 apprentices within 3 years, which was massively ambitious when we started with our partnership with City Gateway. We've actually only brought in, I say only, I mean it's a good number over that time, 50 apprentices into a variety of customer service roles. We brought them in on the old frameworks approach, the customer service level 2 qualification. And City and Guilds, who are a fantastic organisation working in the city, attracting candidates from the housing estates around there and from places where perhaps people are coming from less privilege. Hopefully they're still doing as well as they were when we left them. I know the new standards approach have created some challenges for suppliers. Helped us with pulling together a program. We were able to add in lots and lots of our own training as well at the same time as providing sort of the bare minimum required by that particular framework. We wanted to offer people a full-time position from day one, and I know lots of apprentices end up with short-term contracts in the first instance, but we wanted to make a commitment from the outset that if you're going to join us and pass our extensive interview process. Fair enough, you haven't got the qualifications that we might think are necessary, but we hire for attitude. So if you've got that attitude, we're going to hire you on a full-time contract from the outset. And we didn't draw any funding from it. So Metro Bank funded the whole process from start to finish. We didn't draw down any government funding at all. So we didn't get to where we wanted to be. We wanted 150 apprentices within 3 years. But actually, the frameworks approach was kind of very structured, as you know, and perhaps in a way that didn't necessarily allow us to scale at the rate we wanted to. So, having 20% of time out of the office, and that was normally 1 day a week, proved a bit of a challenge, particularly for a growing bank with, opening 1,000 accounts every day. In our retail stores, having somebody out caused a bit of a problem. So we needed to try and find a way around that, and the frameworks approach actually limited the number of people we could bring through. So when we heard about the levy, we thought, here's an ideal opportunity for us to rethink what we're doing and potentially scale this and do more with it. So we were accepted as, I think, the only other bank, other than Barclays, to be an employer provider in March 2017. And we've been working really hard and diligently ever since to pull together a programme, along with City and Guilds, who have been brilliant, actually. They've really helped us along the way. And they're going to accredit our cashier programme within the standard, and the standard we've picked is the Financial Services Customer Advisor Level 2. So that you get a recognised qualification from City and Guilds as part of the process. You get your Apprentice Level 2 qualification at the end of it after 12 months. And Chartered Banker, I think, are going to act as our endpoint assessor. So thank you very much for that too. But we're going to deliver it all internally. So we have been prepping ourselves for all of the stringent audit requirements and ESFA requirements to be able to do that. And Steph's going to talk you through the process, because Steph is our apprenticeship specialist. And she's actually been orchestrating the process from the outset. So she's been very busy for about 18 months. So we want to make this the main source of our cashier recruitment going forward. So we've got an ambition to bring in about 100 cashier apprentices from next year. We're going to bring in our first cohort of 10 in December, and then see how that goes, and then motor from there. And again, everybody's going to have a permanent position from day one. We're taking them on as an employee. The key for us is that these guys are joining us early, and as I say, will be indoctrinated in our philosophy of a fantastic customer service, and hopefully stay with us for a long time. So I'm going to hand over to Steph, because she's going to talk to you a bit about the process that we've been through in becoming an employer provider, and then we'll introduce you to these guys who will tell you their story, and actually you can ask them some questions, because clearly they're a lot more interesting than I am. Over to you, Steph.
Okay, so this year has been a really exciting time for us. We became an employer provider, and it meant that we could own our training from beginning to end instead of using training providers. But also, this was the first time that we've actually had to use government funding kind of systems. And the real challenge was, how do we prepare ourselves to make sure that we're compliant from both an education, skills, funding agency perspective, as well as set up for Ofsted? This is something that we've never actually had to think about. We've also delivered training to upskill our people, but we've never had to think about it, are we compliant from the government perspective? So actually it was quite challenging, and along this way all the apprenticeship reforms, as you may know, were all coming into place as well. So everyone was learning about these new reforms and how they're going to be affected, and there was no one really that we could turn to say, actually, how have you been doing, how are you set up for the levy, because it's all new to everybody. So we did partner with City and Guilds, and they've been really great in terms of providing their expertise from the funding perspective, but actually there was no one that we could actually kind of lean on, and I think that's a real challenge for an employer who's never really gone and explored the funding system from an educational perspective. But we've overcome that in terms of, we know that there's going to be workshops for employers, which we did look forward to. In March we were told, we're going to go and do these master classes that's going to make sure that you're prepared and you're compliant for all these type of checks. But then the general election came into place, and unfortunately everything came to a halt. So we're ready to go. We've got these amazing opportunities, but actually, unfortunately, out of our control. We just needed to wait to make sure that we were prepared so that we could create an amazing experience for our apprentice cashiers, but also to make sure that we're compliant as well. So that's going to be a real challenge, but we think we're there. We think we're there. So for us now, it's about actually how do we make sure that our first 10 that come in December are going to have an amazing experience. One, we had to design a program that was actually going to upskill them and make sure that they are employable, but also they can achieve their aspirations, but also add value to Metro Bank, not just for now, but actually for years to come, because actually you'll hear from both Azim and Aidan, they're both taking different routes, although they started on the same journey. So everyone will come in as an apprentice cashier, but in terms of what what does success look like to them, it will be very different, and we need to make sure that we're creating that career path that they can see and explore in their time. So although we've had challenges, it has been worthwhile. And Aidan and Azim are going to now share their stories in terms of why employers should be on board in terms of embracing apprenticeships in their organisations.
I'll quickly give you a brief sort of history and story of how I first started and some of the challenges that I've faced and where I am today. So prior to Metro Bank and prior to the apprenticeship, I had no knowledge of retail banking whatsoever. I was at university studying economics. Growing up, I've got 8 other siblings, so everyone was sort of university driven, very degree focused. My mum and dad, they always taught us you have to go and get a degree and so on. So I had that mind frame from a very young age. Once I got to university, it no longer sat with me. I felt like, maybe this isn't something that I wanted to do. Fast forward a year, I spent sort of moving from one job to another and sort of really trying to understand what I want to do next. I just so happened to come across City Gateway at the time, who was associated with Metro Bank and sort of providing apprenticeship with Metro Bank. I happened to apply because a mentor there had given me a bit of advice. It's a great opportunity, provided you don't know much about the organisation, read into it and see what you think of it. I read into it for about a week or so and I said, it looks very interesting. And there was a Metro Bank store local to me, so I've paid them a visit and found out a little bit more information. Going into Metro Bank, you can only imagine leaving university and sort of going from one job to another. You faced various different challenges in your personal life. One of those challenges were making my parents understand what an apprenticeship actually consisted of and what it meant. It's not just a case of facing challenges in your professional life, it's also personal life, Once I kind of made them understand that, it's a case of you can get as far with an apprentice as you can do with a degree, the leaf started changing, the story started changing, the motivation was there, the support was there. Metro Bank have given me various different skills that I can apply to the real world as well, from government legislation understanding, Data Protection Act, all the way to one that my mom's particularly proud of the professional banking course. So she does bring that up whenever she goes to sort of family gatherings and things along that line. So she does have a story to tell about her son. Fast forward sort of 2 years, 11 months, I'm now at an assistant management position. I help to sort of manage and upskill and support a team of a little over 20. I started off as a cashier and, over trial and tribulation and errors and sort of facing challenges, I'm here and I'm very fortunate to be speaking to you lovely people and sort of give you a bit of insight into sort of my story. It's just a case of understanding the difference between how you can support those and then how those that are supporting you can sort of push you forward. Like I said, I've got 8 other siblings, provided they may sort of join Metro Bank or they may not. They now understand the concept of apprenticeship. They now understand how far you can take it and things along that line. But yeah, that's my story. I'll just hand it over to Aidan and he'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Thank you very much. I will keep it relatively brief because if anyone else came in on Southwestern this morning, you will also have aged 5 years. So I started at Metro Bank in July 2015. I finished my A-levels and for me the idea of £9,000 tuition fees of university didn't quite appeal. So instead I went down the apprenticeship route and that's where Metro Bank came in. I first heard about it through a contact of my brother's who had worked previously within the bank. And it is that fantastic brand that you have all heard of, and so far, hopefully, you are seeing the results of it. So I came in as a cashier, the same as we all have, and since then have sort of moved on through that process and am now a customer service representative. That encompasses both retail, business banking, and upkeep, so on. And going forward, I am then moving on to be a local business manager at some point soon. That entails being a point of contact, a representative to look after 2,000 odd small SMEs within your local area. So obviously there's quite a difference in the space of 2 years as to what progression you can go down, and there is that sort of 100 different opportunities, 100 different areas that you can progress in within Metro Bank. And the whole idea that they will support you through the whole way is so that you have the idea of what you want to go to. If you want to go and spend time with the team, you're able to. If you want to go into that team, the way we're growing, within a couple of years, there's probably a team more, about probably like 10 more people within that team. So there's always going to be that great opportunity for you to grow. And so far, here we stand. So far, so good. So hopefully it will continue over the next however many years to go. All right.
So that was a bit of a snapshot, conscious that we cruised through that pretty quickly, but conscious of time, we wanted to also give you the opportunity, if you wanted to ask questions of the way we've gone about this. So if anybody wanted to, are there any questions that you'd like to ask? Yes.
Good morning all, thanks very much for telling your stories, really fascinating. So I'm quite interested in the point you made, Dan, about the Metro Bank strategy, which was about bringing in apprentices and retaining those apprentices, and you've been quite successful in doing that so far. How does that measure up against the perceived wisdom that we hear about Gen Zers who don't want a career in an organisation? They want to be able to move about. I'm really interested in your experience of that, but also your apprenticeship's outlook in that regard.
So I think that people are more impatient than ever before in relation to being able to see career progression and wanting to, see themselves progress in any context. So whether that's within their role, and we're sort of trying to meet that challenge too. So creating kind of incremental benchmarks within role that keep people interested and sort of tied into learning and improving, whether that's their understanding of professionalism or their job-related skills, or just their ability, from our perspective, because this is really important too, to coach and support other colleagues that are coming up underneath them. Because we are recruiting, about 1,000 people at first line level every single year. We grow by about, I think it's about 45% last year. So, we have this kind of unique context, which is, we've got loads of opportunity. Training plays a really vital part in getting people ready for that opportunity. And where we have to plug gaps externally, we potentially run the risk of eroding what we want to be a very tight and a clearly understood culture in relation to service. And that, extends all the way back into IT positions too. And we're now pondering as to how we can get some of our guys in, frontline customer service roles into some of our more technical and specialist functions. And understanding the customer impact that they have, because they may not be serving a customer, but they'll be serving somebody who is. So to answer your question, I think that if you can create career paths that people have really clear visibility of, the standards required of them at different levels and stages in the game, that you can make transparent and obvious so that people can move towards those themselves and provide the opportunities to help them along the way, I think you'll keep people. I think that the people lose patience where they see stagnation, and I sympathise with other organisations that don't quite have the plethora of opportunity that we do, because that challenge is tough. So we feel very privileged to be able to offer people really clear careers, and quite quick careers too, as you've seen. Yes.
Thank you, and thank you too. That was inspiring. You mentioned that you'd had some operational challenges with the 20% requirement for off the job.
Yeah.
I'm interested to understand how moving to an employer provider is, hopefully, you think, definitely going to actually help you operationally with that.
Yeah, good question. So within the frameworks approach and working with a provider, you're obviously tied into the format that they want to run the programme within. We have programs for all of our volume roles already that continually bring people out over time, going back to our previous question, sort of providing incremental skill improvement. So quite often people come into our roles, and by the time they get to the end, by the end of their training program, their role looks completely different to the one that they came in and started servicing. So we're going to apply the same approach to the Apprentice program that we've got for cashiers. We're going to package up that 20% time into little bundles throughout the 12-month process and bring them back for formal interventions face-to-face. I think Mark said actually that there's an increasing, demand for face-to-face interventions. Interestingly, we're seeing an increasing demand for face-to-face banking interventions as well. I think if you can bundle it up into packages that add value in the same way. Clearly you've got your in-role support, which is your one-to-ones, your coachings, your observations, your regular check and balance. But training in chunks can kind of, mitigate some of the need to take out of job time and makes it more manageable for us in relation to shift patterns and all of that kind of stuff. Does that answer the question? Yeah.